start with the first question. How did you start your career as an entrepreneur, and how did you get beyond that fear that all entrepreneurs have at the beginning?
So actually, I'm not probably a typical entrepreneur. So I'm a venture capitalist. So I started in venture capital 8 years ago. And then last year, I decided to quit the fund I was with and start a new fund with 2 partners. And so my experience in entrepreneurship is really limited to venture capital. And but it was very frightening to quit the very comfortable job I had and take the leap. And I think that what really drove me to it is what I saw was a problem with the way venture capital is done. And I wanted the ability to try to solve that problem in my own way. And I thought I had some ideas in how to solve it, but I couldn't do that unless I started my own business. So once I had that idea in my head, it took a little while. It's not, I guess, as quick as starting a web-based company. It takes a little bit longer because you have to raise quite a bit of money. But once we did that, it gave me the ability to try to kind of solve the problems that I see in early stage entrepreneurship investing. So early stage venture capital investing through a firm that's ours, so where we can set the rules and we can decide what investments get made.
All right, so let me ask you one very interesting question. What was the worst idea you've ever met?
I don't know that there's really, I mean, they kind of fall into 2 buckets. There are the ideas that just aren't good, and then there are the ideas that are good but maybe are not right for us to fund, or are right for us to fund. I won't really say there's an idea that's just terrible, because there's so many ideas that kind of fall into that bucket of they're not really good ideas at all. For various reasons. And sometimes, it's as simple as the entrepreneur just doesn't really understand the market, or they haven't really thought it through. And in those, it's kind of hard to pick the worst one. And a lot of times it's just a sort of kind of lack of education or experience on the entrepreneur's part. So it's not really so much about the worst idea, it's more sort of they probably haven't given it enough effort or thought yet for it to develop into an idea that is good.
And what about the best one?
The best one?
You're investing money in the entrepreneur, so that's a big decision.
Well, I can say the best investment I've made so far, and it's only been 8 years, and venture capital is a long-term job, right? So it's going to be 20, 30 years before I really see it. But so far, probably the most successful investment I've had is a company called Soundclud. And Soundclud is based in Berlin. It was started by 2 Swedish entrepreneurs in 2007. And we invested in 2009, and it's a network and a distribution platform for audio. So it's a way for people who create audio, everything from music to interviews like this, to share their audio with each other, receive comments and helpful criticism, etc. on the piece of audio, but then also distribute it to as wide an audience as possible. And so we invested in that with my last fund. Invested in that in 2009, and it was quite small. It was 6 people, and it had about 50,000 users at the time when we first met them. And then now it's up to over 30 million active users, and it has over 200 employees.
So, what do you think about the development of women's entrepreneurship?
I think development in what sense? Do you mean where it is now?
Yeah.
How it's going? I think there's a lot of positive signs. I think generally what I find, and this doesn't just have to do with women entrepreneurs, it has to do with entrepreneurship for anyone. The best thing that works is seeing other people succeed. So seeing role models helps a lot. So if you look at certain geographies that have been really successful in entrepreneurship, so Stockholm, Tallinn in Estonia, some of these are really small geographies, but what they have in common is they saw, in the last generation, some really successful entrepreneurs that served as role models. And I think when people see someone else that they can relate to succeed, so they see someone very young start a company and succeed with it, they see that it's possible. And I think with women entrepreneurs, it's very similar. So if you see women entrepreneurs that start a business and succeed in building it and become successful, I think that helps create the next generation of entrepreneurs. And just in the past there haven't been as many, but there's increasingly more. And I think that's going to inspire more and more women entrepreneurs to come in.
And what about do you have a mentor or?
I have a few mentors in the venture capital industry. So there are some people that I've worked with previously in my last fund that I admire quite a bit. There's some VCs that I've only met a few times, but I think have really changed the way people view the venture capital industry. And so I kind of look at what they've done and kind of think about how I can take some of those learnings and apply them to Europe. A lot of them are in the US. So think about how some of those things apply to Europe, how, what the similarities between the industries are, what the differences are, and how you can apply them. And I think venture capital is one of those where the mentoring helps quite a bit because it is quite a difficult industry to be successful at. So between mentoring and experience, you really need a combination of them to do well.
All right. Let's imagine the situation that I'm presenting my idea to you.
Okay.
And what would you recommend to a young entrepreneur like me? Because,
I suppose it depends on where you are. If you've already built a product and launched it and you have users and traction, then you're in the very
in the beginning.
You're in the very beginning. Then I would say, I think, first of all, you should try to find co-founders. I think generally co-founders are great in doing a startup because startups are extremely, extremely hard. And the more people you have not the more people, but if you have someone else emotionally committed with you, it just makes that journey so much easier. If you don't have anyone else who's kind of along for the ride, the ups and downs, it becomes much harder. So that's one. And then two, I'd say you should meet with other entrepreneurs that are probably further ahead than you are and learn from them. So learn from their mistakes, learn from their successes. What do they do right? What do they do wrong? And try to find a mentor for yourself. So someone who can relate to the stage you're at, the situation you're in. And finding someone who's from a similar background, I think, helps a lot. So if you find someone who comes from a country where entrepreneurship is revered and everyone does it, and you come from a country that doesn't, it's not going to be that helpful to you, right? So finding someone who comes from that similar situation really helps. And then, you get some of their time, kind of their week per week, to help you along and help you avoid making some of the basic mistakes that I think everyone makes. And they kind of guide you the right way. You can, also relate to their network and maybe take advantage of it. And then in the meantime, building your own network. And by network, I don't mean going out to events and talking to people for 5 minutes. And that's not really building a network. I mean, build real relationships with entrepreneurs, angel investors, people that you think you'd like to hire one day, and start really building those relationships. So I think as you go on, you'll find that they're one of the most valuable things you have in your life, but also you'll learn the most from them.
Right. Thanks for the meaningful advice. And before we end our conversation, I want to ask you the most important question in the interview. Is the name of our media is new trend. Mm-hmm. Tell me, which are the new trends for you nowadays?
Not particularly trend focused, I guess. So we look more at what are kind of some fundamental problems that there exist, and are there entrepreneurs who understand those problems who are trying to solve them. Sometimes it comes in trends. I think that has to do with the fact that certain industries, certain markets just change. So right now, for example, you're seeing a lot in education. It's probably because the education market is possibly opening up to technology. Maybe not in the official government sense, but parents are more and more opening up to using technology to supplement the traditional education system. So we're seeing a lot there. Still a lot in e-commerce, and actually particularly a lot in e-commerce software. So not as much the e-commerce companies itself, but people building technology that helps an e-commerce company develop. So things that help with everything from marketing to customer acquisition to increasing the purchase behavior of existing customers. So all kinds of technology to assist e-commerce companies. I think that's going to continue because e-commerce is going to continue to grow. as a percentage of traditional commerce. Beyond that, I think a sort of not specific industry trend but geographic trend is seeing companies come from geographies that aren't just the traditional startup hubs. So not just London, Berlin in the last few years, but also cities like Cologne, Sofia, Tallinn, other cities that maybe don't get the same amount of publicity as London or Berlin in Europe, but actually have phenomenal technology talent and entrepreneurs.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Teli, for sharing your knowledge. Just to let you know, it's a big goal for our Bulgarian society. So thanks. Yes.